Greetings, my friends. Father Leo here, and once more back with the program Leo Talks. And Leo Talks has been interviewing very interesting and inspirational people. And of course, we continue to do that week by week. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me, interesting and inspirational both. And it really connects to a lot of events in my own life and his story, which he will unfold today. But because it is a very long story, we'll do one interview today, and in a few days we'll do interview number 2. And I think you'll find that the number 2 will flow naturally and easily out of interview number 1. So today I want to welcome Mark Willard to the program. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Leo. Great to be here.
And Mark, we're going to be talking about your journey and especially your faith journey, the development of your spirituality, and the various forces, influences, experiences that have brought you to where you are today. But also I know that you started off, which is a kind of a, doesn't happen every day, where we have somebody who is a PK. Do you know what a PK is?
Preacher's kid.
And I remember, Mark, I grew up in an Irish Catholic community. I didn't even know what a Protestant was. Then I went to high school, and of course, it's a wholly different thing with everybody coming. It was a big catchment basin, but there were 2 PKs in my classroom. One was a boy and one was a girl. And I remember the boy very well because he was very accepted. We never saw anything, just another classmate. But he had a feeling that to be accepted, if we were bad, he had to be badder to win popularity. So I saw that. And whereas the girl was very much into her particular denomination and found it more difficult to connect. So the PK was, I saw the struggle they had. And so I'm wondering, how about your own experience of being the son of a United Church minister? What was it like for you as a kid to be the son of a United Church minister? What were some of the expectations that you felt within yourself? They may or may not have been from your family, but you felt them within yourself.
Well, you know what? To be honest, Leo, I don't think I recall having pressure felt from my surroundings, the school, the teachers, my fellow students. The only one time I remember this story, the grade 6 Christmas pageant, the school principal and teachers knew that I was the son of a United Church minister. So I got picked out to play the role of Jesus in a reenactment of part of Matthew and the sheep and the goats. And my job in a sackcloth was to walk around and pantomime, knocking on doors, 3 different doors, saying, "Can I come in and warm myself and have a crust of bread?" And got turned away from 2 doors in a row. And finally, at the 3rd door, "May I come in and warm myself?" And yes, I was welcomed in. And then at that point, I removed the pins from my sackcloth, and underneath was a white robe with a red sash that my mother had made for me, that I now gave that message about, "You did this to the least of these, you've done it unto me." And so I was sort of playing Jesus in a what's the word, amateur kind of way. And I know that came because I was a PK, and I didn't enjoy the experience, frankly. It felt like an obligation, but there you go. The one other thought that just came to me, my mother one day, and I don't remember how old I was, called me her golden-haired boy. You know, this sort of image that she had of me, that I would be good, and maybe not perfect, but at least good, kind, generous, all those kinds of things. And I felt pressure from that when she said that that day. So funny how you brought that back to my memory. I feel like I'm in a bit of a counseling session here, Leo, but let's carry on with
Yeah.
the story.
Well, that's an interesting part of your story because the environment in which you're living. But you tell me that at a certain age, you had an image also of your father as a minister, that he knew a great deal of things, and you decided to find out, and you asked him a question, and you were surprised by his answer. What was that all about?
Yeah, we're riding in the car. I was about 6 years old. We were in Vancouver still, about a year before we moved to Ontario. And on the radio came a news report where they're talking about this guy who I didn't know, named Bertrand Russell in the UK, who was actively lobbying against the atomic bomb and wanted countries around the world to ban the bomb. And I asked Dad, after hearing a bit of this and not quite understanding it, saying, Dad, if we blow up the world, is God going to give us another one? And there was silence for a very long pause. And then after that, he said, I don't know. And I thought, what? My dad, who knows everything, and especially everything about God because he's a minister, didn't know the answer to this fundamental question, would God restore us if we mess things up? And so I went away from that deep in my soul, not thinking about it all the time, but this seed planted of needing to find out answers to big questions myself instead of always thinking they're going to be handed to me or given to me from some other source, expert, authority, whatever. And so that instilled that in me. And I also got this feeling in me that I needed correct answers. I didn't want mystery. I didn't want uncertainty. I wanted correct and true answers to my big questions.
But the experience seems to me it was a blessing in disguise because somehow it uncovered within your psyche, within your soul, that whole thing of questing, not just questioning, but questing for deeper meaning. And somehow I have a sense that has played out in your life over the years of your life, that you continue to quest for meaning and answers and wrestle with questions.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, and I wouldn't have realized that for a long time. That wasn't sort of my understanding of my own kind of motivation in life and purpose in life. But as I look back, that's absolutely the case.
Uh-huh. And so, being that having that awakening at that early age, looking back over your history, when can you see that you really started to bring that quest into your life and start questing and searching and for whatever it was, the questions that were in your soul that had you had been awakened to?
Well, around the age of 9 or 10, I had the Toronto Star newspaper route. That's your second Bible, right, Leo? Or is that your first Bible, the Toronto Star? I had an early Bible route. And I remember distinctly, I'll never forget this, straddling the bike, stopped at around Dixie Road and Dundas Highway in Mississauga, and thinking to myself, in about 15 years, I'm going to have my PhD, and then I'm going to know everything I need to know about the subject that's most interesting to me, which at that point was mostly me trying to figure me out and a little bit about what life was about. And I said to myself on that bicycle, Mark, you're not going to forget this moment. And I've never forgotten it. It has always come back to me. And there's more to the story, but we'll get there when I age a little bit more. Because after having that experience, a lot of time went under the bridge, and I got to high school and I slacked off. I wasn't so perfectionist motivated as I had been in elementary school, trying to do my best and always get straight A's and all that sort of stuff, which was driving me in my elementary school years. But in high school, marks came really easily, so I didn't work hard. I slacked off and I discovered marijuana. And that was such a relaxing experience for me. I wasn't ever, I would say, addicted to it, but it was nice enough of a diversion for me that I just didn't feel driven academically to do so well. But then at 17 years of age, and about grade 12, well, it was grade 12, I went into a real depression, mainly about a girl, and that's a whole other story, Leo. We don't want to get into that today.
Oh, you and I can both tell stories about high school and girls.
I think most men can. So that's for another time, but a feeble suicide attempt led me to realize I got to do something about this. And it's what motivated me to, in going to university, Queens, to sign up for the honors BA in psychology program, to take an honors in psychology, a major, and go through that thinking that this academic world of professors and psychology and so on was going to help me figure out who I am. And why would I feel depressed? And where would I be struggling emotionally, mentally inside? And by the end of second year, Leo, I realized that this academic program, these courses, that's not where the answers were. And just as I was coming to that realization, I remember in a hallway seeing a poster of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And in his eyes was this depth of peace and knowing that I was just so drawn to. And I thought, I got to figure out how he has what he has and why I'm not feeling that way. And so I signed up for Transcendental Meditation one weekend in February of 1972, learned TM, and in that first meditation had the deepest experience of peace that I'd ever felt. Marijuana didn't touch it whatsoever. It was this depth of peace and well-being that I'd been looking for all along and thinking that academia and academic knowledge was going to give that to me. And it clearly wasn't. It was this personal experience of who we really are inside, which is a being, a child of God, loved by God, with God's image implanted in us, and simply calling us to open up to the truth of that presence, of that God within who loves us unconditionally. And so in that moment of deep peace, I realized, I don't know if I can finish this BA in psychology. I ultimately did, because enough good advice came from outside people who said, if you don't get this degree, you're not going to have the same choices in life and be able to work and so on. But it became the whole new motivation for me, was to realize that spiritual growth was an inside job. And then once the inside kind of got reoriented and fixed, then you could engage with the world in a wholly different way, and with a new spirit of love, compassion, encouragement, all those kinds of things that we're all called to be.
I remember when I went back in my mid-age to study psychology, especially pastoral counseling. We're all second career people, eh? And when the professor asked us why we're there, the answer from all of us were, so I can help other people. And he was smiling. And he said, you're not here to help other people. You're here to find out about yourself. And when you tell your story, it resonates with me that a lot of time psychology is a stepping stone. And we do find out about ourselves. And for you, leading you into transcendental meditation, and then surprisingly, I heard you say that it opened you up to a new awareness of God, which I was surprised that transcendental meditation was the window through which you look to see and experience the presence of God within you.
Yeah, precisely. A year after I had been instructed in TM and practicing it regularly every day, had stopped smoking marijuana because it got in the way of this depth of peace experience. It was clouding my mind, not helping me. So I let that go to the wayside. And a year after, I had this 30-minute overwhelming sense of energy of love and connectedness in the universe, in me, out of me, through me. My roommate came back half an hour into that half-hour experience. Mike came into the room and he said, "What are you on?" I said, "I'm not on anything. I'm just having this blissful, joyful, amazing experience." And when I looked at Mike and thought about anybody else, I could see this presence in him, in them. And I hadn't lost my mind. I even tried writing before he came into the room just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. And I could write stuff. And so I thought, okay, my mind hasn't completely gone. So I just went with this thing. And then from that time on, I became what I'd like to call myself a wannabe mystic. I was reading the mystical literature, Autobiography of a Yogi, a book by Thomas Kelly, Testament of Devotion, which is going to come up in another part of my story. And Richard M. Buck wrote a book called Cosmic Consciousness. And I read that book cover to cover and was starting to get a more an intellectual understanding of what this overwhelming spiritual experience had been. But I decided right then and there, I'm not going after my PhD. Given that the book learning for my BA had gotten me nowhere in terms of this understanding of myself, I thought, no, I'm letting it go. And so that dream on my bicycle when I was 10 years old in 1960 about having my PhD, it just disappeared. And with no regret and no sort of sense of loss or having given something up.
But I have a sense of it launched you, the, that whole experience, and I do call it a mystical experience, really launched you into another path of life that you've been following and pursuing ever since that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely shifted my orientation to what I wanted to do. I first wanted to get to a depth of understanding of this spirituality. And what I did with that, when I came to some kind of not plateau, but a place of feeling like I really understood it, then I didn't know where I was going to go. But meanwhile, I graduated from university and I did get a job right away, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to hold off the whole work career life apart from that. Where it took me, though, Leo, is into this question of so churches. Where are churches in my experience of spirituality and
Right.
growth? And I want to go back to my childhood when my older sister, younger brother, had to go to church where dad was preaching as the minister in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver. And I hated the itchy gray shorts I had to wear. I hated Sunday school. And we went because we had no choice at that time. And then in 1956, Dad got a promotion or an invitation to come and work in communications at the head office of the church. So he moved to Mississauga from Vancouver so he could be commuting to Toronto every day. And so I kept going to his church, our church in Mississauga,
Right.
until the age of 12. And the confirmation course that my dad actually led, I got the confirmation of, you're now a United Church member of not quite adulthood, but, you're
Right.
whatever. And I took that as graduation from
Oh, yeah.
church. And so I stopped attending regularly just because it just didn't seem to feed me particularly. And my parents blessed me no longer going on a regular basis to church because I had this confirmation in hand. So
Right.
whatever, I didn't really understand all that part.
Were you surprised, or even looking back today, are you surprised that your parents gifted you with that freedom to no longer attend the church?
Absolutely. My father, yes, a minister, yes, a very serious and almost too serious kind of guy, did not impose his beliefs and his perspective on any of us. He didn't force any of us to think any particular way. He was very, what's the word, just open-minded, and would engage in discussion, but without any dictatorial kind of stuff. The only thing we did as kids, that was more my mother than my father, was say our prayers before bed every night, and of course say grace at every meal. That was a given, and I was quite happy with doing those things. Although the now I lay me down to sleep childhood prayer, just when I think of it now, it just seems kind of almost superficial. But we did it, and I said it, and yeah. But yeah, I give my dad great credit for his openness. I think if he had pushed us to continue on and the discipline of going to church, I would have rebelled even more. So
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to talk about. I remember when I was a kid growing up, there was 11 of us, and My father promised his mother before she died that he would have his family pray the rosary every night. Well, I can tell you, 11 kids kneeling down on the floor. And actually, some of us enjoyed it because we would pinch one another. And we had a lot of fun during the rosary because we acted up and hopefully that we didn't get caught. But night prayers it just was. And looking back, it probably didn't do us any harm, but it set the stage for prayer later in life. That prayer would be a strong spiritual practice. And you feel a transcendental meditation. This seemed to have been a big key in your life, though. That it really did open you up and give you that mystical experience.
And the depression that I'd had in grade 12 and 13 that led to that feeble suicide attempt, especially grade 12, that depression never came back. What did come back as that was working itself out as the healing process from meditating regularly unfolded was that internal anger or anger turned against yourself, which is some way of describing depression. I became angry outward, and I would quickly react whatever negatively to things around me, situations or people or whatever, that was now projecting the anger out. And it took some time of regularly meditating for that to kind of resolve and get into a more normal, controlled situation. And I still occasionally react. I still get my elbows up sometimes. So,
But I hear you saying, though, that your mother, be a good boy, being angry and being aggressive and stuff kind of resulted in repressing a lot of anger within yourself. And as Carl Jung said, a psychiatrist, said, if we listen to our depression, it generally has a message for us. And I have a sense that it taught you or forced you or brought you to find a way out of it rather than pills or psychotherapy.
yeah, that's correct. Yes. But it was kind of a working it through on my own with the guidance of the mystics and so on that I was trying to understand and grow with. But yeah.
But I also got a sense you're telling me that you no longer turn your anger against yourself and probably acted it out, and did other people kind of become a lightning rod for your anger?
Not so much individuals, but the systems, and in particular, the presence of poverty and the welfare system in Ontario became a focus for my future career, and where I felt like a rich society like Ontario should be able to do right by people who are single parents, the disabled, people, whether mental or physical, that we should be able to support people in those situations to the extent that they need that support. And a wealthy society should be able to help the poorest and the most vulnerable. So that became a kind of an underlying motivation for me career-wise and purpose in life-wise, was to try to get the system repaired, as it were.
Yeah. So I guess that's where social justice was awakened within you, the injustice of society and your concern, your feelings about a just society surfaced.
Absolutely. In fact, my father, being a lifetime member of the CCF NDP, and he was a volunteer for Tommy Douglas's election back in the late 20s, early 30s. He was doing volunteer work for Tommy Douglas and was very involved in kind of social justice activities. In fact, for his whole life he was. And I think somehow DNA wise, or just hearing him talk about what he was involved in, instilled that in me too, without me really knowing where it was coming from. So yeah, that's where that anger then, needing to right things that were wrong, needing to be, that came from both my father and this spiritual awakening.
Spiritual awakening, what you experienced, eh? Okay, Mark, I think that's it for today, because part 2 will come whenever we set the date for another interview. I think this is a good one today. That whole thing of that quest you had, that questing, and that hunger and thirst within you, and how it has really been the force within you which just moved you through all those different ages and stages to where you are today. And I think that you yourself would claim that you are a mystic.
Well, I'm a wannabe mystic, Leo. There are days when I feel far, far away, but there are other days where I feel so close I can just taste it. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, that's really tremendous what you shared here today, what we've talked about. And I'll look forward to doing interview number 2 in a few days. And we can set a date for that and give a call. And we can talk about how you moved at the various churches as this journey that you've been on, as you made that journey to the point of where you are today, as far as your own spirituality is concerned. So I look forward to following this up with interview number 2, Mark.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
God bless.